Today, I'm joined by Barbara With, an award-winning author, psychic channel, peace activist, and the visionary behind Conflict Revolution, a groundbreaking approach to resolving inner conflict and outer conflict. Barbara's work bridges metaphysics, emotional intelligence, and the science of compassion. And at the heart of it all is her decades-long channeling of none other than Albert Einstein. We're going to dive into what it means to resolve a conflict at the level of the psyche, how Einstein's unified field theory plays into her work, and why compassion might be the most powerful force for change on the planet. If you've ever felt torn between your inner truth and outer reality, or if you're curious about how science, spirit, and emotional mastery intersect, this episode might just expand your sense of what's possible. Thank you so much for joining me from Norway today, Barbara.
Yes, Nadine, thanks so much for having me. I'm on a little stop on my world tour this time, and you caught me in Norway.
That's so cool. What's the time difference then? Because it's 5:30 in the evening here in Australia.
It's 9:30.
AM.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice realistic time.
I'm in the same day as you.
Yeah, just. Yeah.
Yeah, just about.
My family is in the UK, so I'm kind of familiar with that time zone, but often my guests are in the US and it can be a bit of a
It's like
juggle
a
to
different
find
day.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a lot to talk about. And
Yes,
so
yes.
let's get stuck in. Can you share a little bit about your story to get us started, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Just quickly, I grew up in music. I was a composer at a very young age. After high school, I became a professional musician for 20 years. And as a writer, a songwriter, that process of writing songs set me up later to become a psychic channel. And in high school, my friend's mom was a psychic, and so I saw her for many years. So I knew what it was when I sort of started spontaneously automatic writing, but it was still, very surprising. And that whole story of where being a psychic channel took me to channeling groups with two other women. We call ourselves the Psychic Sorority. And we published our first book in 1997, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority. And from that, which is another long story that I'll spare everyone, but I jumped off to discovering that I could speak to people who had passed on, and then getting an invitation from a metaphysical tabloid to talk to Princess Di on the 1 year anniversary of her death. And that led to the discovery of these other famous dead people who were hanging around me. And one of them was Albert Einstein. So in 2005, I thought I'm going to do a book just for Albert, because I was so enthralled with the fact that his voice had been with me for so long. And out of that came, much of a surprise to me, a unified field theory, which is something he never did in real life, with what he calls the map of human consciousness, and then the scientific definition of compassion. And all of this work has been the development of Conflict Revolution, which I actually started channeling with the Psychic Sorority, and then started teaching in 1999 in a nonprofit I was working at. So it became that, and then I just kept teaching it. So that's kind of the nutshell.
It's pretty mind blowing.
It's really...
One thing that I like, we're going to talk about all of these things. I'm so fascinated by your experience of this, as well as like what you've actually been channeling, but your own psychic experience. One thing that I find really that I really connect with you, I've watched a couple of other videos of interviews that you've done, is that you're really down to earth. And like, to say that you've channeled Albert Einstein, I really want to know, like, how has that been received? You obviously had a background in the psychic world prior to that, but that's pretty hectic.
It has been hectic. And when I started doing the groups with the girls, um, in my head, my mentor was an antenna. And that's how she described herself. She was picking up information my higher power wanted to get to my human mind. And that's how I saw it. And when I started to channel, that's how I saw me. So when the girls asked in a session, "Who are you?" And they said, "You can call us angels." And you're talking about being down to earth. First of all, I never really had an intention to pursue this. I wanted to be a rock star. So, and I'm naturally skeptical as a person. And I think that's a very healthy thing. And I think the truth outlives skepticism, which I think is the point of it. So once I got over my skepticism of angels, and then found out I could actually speak with those who had passed on, and then in that interview, when I had done Princess Di, and that was a mind blowing. I was very skeptical of even that request. Like, is this going to cheapen my gift, or what is this? And so I was doing these other. We got to John Kennedy, and we didn't even have Einstein on the list. And when he said, "We'll tell you who's in the circle of souls," and then said Einstein, and I went, I imagined this is how I did it. I imagined I was talking to them, and then I did my channeling. That was the voice of every reading I'd ever done. And it was so shocking to me. It was shocking enough to go to angels. And now it's like, wait a minute, are you telling me that Einstein was one of the angels? And literally, I have to say, Nadine, it took me several years to come fully out of the closet to say, because it's ridiculous. What are you doing? But when I did it, it was right after 9/11. And I thought, I just published Party of 12, the afterlife interviews. And these were these 12 famous dead people working in afterlife with us for world peace. And I thought, I've got conflict revolution, and I've got this amazing information. I should at least open myself up to the possibility that it might be true. And so I had a big group in my living room, and it was just fascinating. Nobody doubted it. Nobody said, "What do you mean you're channeling Einstein?" They asked these questions that were so pertinent. If you're talking to John Kennedy after 9/11, if you're talking to Anwar Sadat and all these other personalities, but it did take me a long time to fully embrace it. And I'll have to say, when it finally happened, I was at a big event in 2007, and thousands of people, and probably 500,000 people around the world. And I came out to the stage and I said what I usually say, which is, "Okay, I'm not here to convince you it's Einstein. Just listen to what he has to say. And then you tell me," knowing I'm not a scientist, I never went to college, "you tell me." And afterwards, people lined up down the aisle to meet me and have me sign their book. And every one of them said the same thing. They admonished me: "Quit sounding like it's not Einstein. That was Einstein. He came to me. He talks to me." It's like, okay, all right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I do have to say, just one more thing about it is that I just came from Barcelona, where I had a presentation of the conference of Science of Consciousness conference put on by the University of Arizona, Tucson. For 30 years, these scientists have done this conference. And when they started out 30 years ago, it was all the left brain scientists with their, chicken scratching, whatever they were doing. And as they were exploring the nature of consciousness, quite naturally, suddenly the artists were coming. Suddenly the psychologists were coming. Suddenly the Rumi poets and the meditators were coming. So that my talk on July 8th this year, where I was finally presenting my unified field theory to the scientists, it was almost 70 years to the day that Einstein's actual last words were read in London, the Russell Einstein Manifesto. And so there was this huge synchronicity. And as I didn't have all the big scientists there in the room with me. But suddenly now I'm hearing, oh yes, the center of the universe is within the earth and it is a black hole. That was something that came out in 2005 that I thought, are you kidding me? I have to go in front of scientists who may actually know things and tell them that it's in the, and suddenly, oh, Nassim Harriman and Brian Greene and everybody's talking about how the black hole is in the center of the earth. And so that was a really huge lifetime validation for me that I just came out of.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know where to go with this. Like so
I
many different
know.
directions. Okay, so you realize you're a psychic channel and you've been doing it for a long time, but can you describe how it actually works? Because you were talking about the voice, and the voice that you had been hearing was that of Einstein. The original voice that you had used to channel had always been Einstein, or
Looking back,
you
yes.
determined later on, yeah. So how does it actually work? Do you hear a voice and then you speak what they're saying? Do you write it down? Like what's the process?
Well, when I started, I wrote
Okay.
because that's how it officially started. I was writing a letter to a friend, and suddenly the whole tone shift and this really high level information started coming through. But I always akin it to songwriting. Because when I started writing music when I was 12 or 13, I did it because I grew up in such a traumatic household that I felt like if I didn't get this emotion and these thoughts and my voice out of me, I was going to go crazy or I was going to die. And so that involved going into it felt like outer space. I mean, I'm 13 years old and describing it. And I would listen and I would hear like the first 4 bars of just a melody and some words. What if Lucifer was gravity? And I would take that and I would figure out the chord structure. And I just play those 4 bars like in a little trance until the next 4 bars came out. And science really was religion. So that was my process of writing songs that really translated when I first did my speaking. About a year after I'd started writing, and this is 1987, I would go and I would just listen and then I would say, and it was sort of a combination of hearing something outside myself, but then feeling like I was saying it, having it come out of me. And my gauge of what it was in the beginning was sort of like in the Bible, they say something like, you'll know them by their fruits. So to me, the information was so high level and it was so profound for the people who were listening to it. That very first time after I got out of my thing, people were crying and how do you know that? And it was all basically about self-love.
Mm.
And that's how I started it today, all these years later. Like I started when I was 34 and now I'm 70. To me, it's a seamless reality that I can tell you, there's nowhere for souls to go. The veil between the worlds keeps us separated, but they're not supposed to like go to the light and disappear,
Okay.
like, right? But they described it early on. They were talking about privacy. And what is privacy like in afterlife? Privacy isn't that we put up a bunch of screens and so no one can see us. Privacy is that I turn my head away from you when you need privacy. It's a relationship where it's a respect that we give each other. And that's what I've developed is that I have a privacy. Oftentimes psychics are, especially people who, talk to angels or dead people, oh, they're everywhere all the time and I can't, I don't know how
Mm.
to blah, blah, blah. Well, no, you develop a privacy and they're very respectful. But at any time, I can say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? and get access to that information.
When you do get access to that information, is it like a conversation, or is it then like is there a two-way thing going on, or does it come through you in the same way as when you channel?
Sometimes it's a conversation. I did a reading the other day, and the woman wanted to talk to her brother who had passed away. And to me, that felt more like he was kind of sitting over here and I was listening and I was telling her.
Yeah.
But other times on podcasts, someone will say, "Hey, can you just do a little channel?" And then I can close it down and siphon it through me and let them share my DNA.
Oh wow! But is that tiring?
I always say I'm like a marathon runner who
Okay.
goes out to do a couple miles.
Yeah.
It's really no sweat.
No, great. That's brilliant. That's good.
Yeah.
I want to hear more, obviously, about Albert Einstein and the work that that the angels that you've been channeling have kind of want you to bring into the world. But I think that our listeners would be very keen to hear a little bit more about Princess Diana before we move on. Who
Well,
wouldn't be?
I
What did she
know, and
say?
I was too. And when I sat down to talk to her, I was so skeptical. And I did typing I channeled through typing. So I typed the questions and the answers. I didn't come up with the questions beforehand. I just sat down and really some of her information was just, well, some of it was her information about her relationship with Dodie. Like,
Okay.
what were they talking about the last night? And what she said was they were talking about the fact that he wanted to worship her and she was absolutely done being worshiped. You
Mm.
know, she didn't want to be worshiped. She just wanted to be, you know, she could never really, but, and so she said they sort of made this deal that she couldn't stop him from worshiping her because that was part of his culture as well, but that she was still going to remain just this grounded, earthy person. And at every turn, she would help him just be the grounded, earthy person she wanted him to be. And then when they left the restaurant, she said there was this kind of arrogance that they had. Like there's this arrogance that you get when you're famous and you're rich and you're worshiped, that you can do anything.
Mm.
And so the paparazzi started following them and they were like, "Yeah, let's outrun the paparazzi." And it ended poorly and she came back into her body. She didn't die right away. And she came back into her body when she was leaving and her first thought was, "Oh my God, my kids."
Mm.
And then she came back into her body and apparently her angels said, "This is your time. Your kids are going to be fine." And then she left.
Mm.
And her message to the world was a continuation of these angels' message, which was, if everyone who put flowers at the palace when I died would do conflict revolution, we'd have world peace in a day.
Mm.
And because she was the first one that I interviewed for this book party of 12 after they revealed they were already there, everything that anybody channeled after that, Jackie O came in, John Kennedy, Freud, Marilyn Monroe, they all had a piece of culture like Jackie O. Well, if I could tell you then what I know now about publishing and fame and how to make peace, here's what I'd say. And then Marilyn Monroe had femininity and sexuality and abortion, things like that. Um, Freud had psychology. Of course, he had to make up for. So so that's kind of how that whole project began with her.
Okay. And you interviewed all of them into a book.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so cool.
Well, it's cool because I didn't know a lot about any of them.
Mm,
I mean,
I
I
was going to
didn't
ask
know
that.
hardly anything about, say, Anwar Sadat.
I don't even know that name.
But Anwar Sadat was the leader of Egypt who, along with Begin, went to Camp David to make the very first peace between Egypt and Israel, because they had been Egypt had attacked Israel on during a holy day, and so I didn't know anything about that. And as time passed, and I thought, well, I should look into who these people are and what they really happened to them. And I didn't know, for example, that Einstein and Freud had a series of communications after World War I that were sponsored by the League of Nations. The League of Nations was trying to like bring the world back together intellectually. So they were asking famous people to write about topics. And they have this whole conversation about how do you stop war? So it's been absolute, and it still happens to this day where I'm finding out things like I just did this dive into Freud, a deeper dive into Freud about what really was he saying in real life, and finding out it was pretty controversial in today's standards. And so then I went back and read the interview and I saw it in a whole different way. Like, oh my God, you truly are trying to make up for some devious stuff that you put out in culture.
Oh,
So it's fascinating.
wow. What was I going to say? Yeah, that is fascinating. So I'm kind of curious about the conflict revolution.
Revolution.
You started that before you started channeling the Party of 12, and
Yes.
so there is but it seems from what I've read that there is an interconnectedness
Yes.
with the information that you've been receiving from them and Albert Einstein. Is he one of the 12, or is he an
Yes.
extra?
No.
Um, and the conflict revolution that you'd already created. When you created conflict revolution, and I'd love to get into more of the nuts and bolts of what that is. When you created that, was that part of um, the sorority and the angels
Yes.
and that
So
experience?
when we started doing our groups and they said, you can call us angels, of which
Mm-hmm.
I went, "Oh, really?" What the angels said was they had this theory about how humans could first resolve conflicts within them in a way that would naturally change how it manifests around us. And the idea was if we focused on our work, the byproduct would be world peace. And they needed humans who were having actual conflicts to test their theory. So Kim and Teresa and I volunteered and were chosen apparently to be those people. So we would do these groups and transcribe them. And we had our first big conflict between us. And I hadn't known these women at all. They were clients who had come to me, and now we're bonded at the hip. But um, so we had our first conflict, and we're at my dining room table, and I'm doing, yes, but you need to. And she's going, you need to, and you need to. And I said, wait. Let's get the transcript. This is our chance. And afterwards, when we did the channel after we applied it, which I'll get to in a second, we did a channel and the angels said, yes, we filed into the dining room and we were all waiting with bated breath. And when you got it, we raised our beer steins. And I thought, angels drink beer?
Yeah,
What are you
right.
talking about? So the piece that changed everything in that moment was a line from one of the master sessions we did. And it said, if you're involved in a conflict emotionally, the root of your part is within you.
Mm.
And this is 1994. And these ideas are still a little renegade.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly for me, who was a big rageaholic, I mean, I came from trauma and addiction and was constantly everybody. But when I read that, and we all, there was sort of this swooshy kind of Satori moment, and we all looked at each other, and start crying. And I came back and I said, all right, here's what I can do to help resolve this conflict. And Kim came in and said, here's what I can do. And we had this whole completely different dynamic. But what was most profound was I went to work that night. I was playing music at a hotel in Minneapolis, and there was a waitress there who just had never liked me, was never friendly, never had a word to say to me. And I don't care, everybody's whatever. I'm going to work. She could not get enough of me. Oh, Barbara, I've got a cassette of Patti Smith and put $20 in my tip jar. And I was thinking to myself, skeptic, I was like, what's going on here? And then I got it. It's like the connection was made. If we change this energy, we have a profound effect on how people respond to us. And it wasn't actually brain surgery to think if I go into a room, ready to, prove I'm right, I'm going to stir up the energy in a different way than if I walk in calm with the attitude that I'm going to promote peace. I mean, it seemed magical, but I think it is in a way. So that was the beginning of the three of us having many conflicts and applying it further and deeper. And it was 1999 when I first went. I was working at a nonprofit as a contractor, and there was a lot of conflict in the organization. And I said to the president, hey, I've got this process. Would you let me flesh it out into a workshop and give it to the staff? And it was so successful, we adapted it to be anger management, to be empowerment, to be manifestation. And that's kind of how it got kicked off.
Wow. Yeah, it is very interesting, isn't it? That whole the conflict within and the what we see in our outer world is a mirror of what's going on in our inner world. I've in the last couple of years gone through, my own processes with that stuff, and just how it shapes your reality is quite extraordinary.
So when
And
Einstein, oh, I'm sorry, go on.
no, go.
So when Einstein came into the picture, the beer steins made sense. Like, oh,
Right.
wait a minute. And then as we moved on through the years, it came very clear to me that when I started doing automatic writing back in 87, and I said, who are you? And they said, we're sound. And at the time, being so immersed in wanting to be a rock star and doing all the songwriting, I was fine with that. But in the long run, because of the actual psychological challenges that have gone along with this journey that I'm on, they had to start slow
Mm.
and introduce. And it's just such a brilliant plan that they did. And now going back to what you were saying about your own inner journey, the shadow side,
Mm.
all of that is so much more popular. That emotion affects our health. So much of that is so much more popular. And
Mm.
just recently, I did finally Jung emerged. And I did a whole session about why wasn't Jung at the table with the party of 12? Because that information about our aspects and the 12 aspects fits right into conflict revolution, expands it, it works it well. But it's so much more acceptable and understandable. And I don't know exactly what process you did facing those things, but everybody finds their own way inside to deal with this shadow side, which is then if we don't, we just project it onto the world and it becomes those things. It manifests as those wars and conflicts and illness.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, well, it's all our perception as well, isn't it? Like, yeah, if we're angry on the inside for whatever reason, and we might not even be aware of it, what we see is a negative projection of that around us.
Yes.
Same with fear, also, yeah, all sorts of things.
Well, and I think the revolutionary part about conflict revolution is that not only did his unified field theory and his maps of human consciousness and all of that bring us the theory of why conflict revolution works,
Okay.
why when we change it here, he split the inner world into three human dimensions, he calls them. So the biggest revolutionary part, I think, is where there's the emotion of fear, which we, in our solar plexus, we put our emotion. Then there's the thoughts of fear and the description of why you're afraid and what to do about it. And those are two decidedly different energies. So this misconception, I think, that's been around, that you should stay out of the anger and you should stay out of the depression and stay out of that because it's low energy. Actually not. We should move it out of our bodies, but not let it marry to the thoughts of fear and depression. And now that's far more acceptable, and I see it everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I've been trying to teach my kids that, especially my son, who's quite emotional. Let it move through you. Let it move through you. I love you.
Use your breath.
Let it move through you.
And what's beautiful about our work is that he's proven why, and this is very counterintuitive. I don't think most people grasp it, just the concept of it, is that when I can capture that fear and that anger and move it through with my breath, I can fuel whatever thought into reality. So I can marry all of that intensity to a projection of peace and love and manifestation. Right. And it still feeds that. It doesn't have to be the high level emotion to feed it that way.
Yeah, you transmute it. Yeah. Can you talk us through a little bit about conflict resolution and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have these three human dimensions, and we separate them.
What's the third? I don't know if I got the third.
Oh. Intuition.
Intuition. Okay.
So intuition is in the heart.
Yeah.
And intellect in the head. And and then the witness. So you can step outside yourself and in the course of a day, see what you're thinking, see what you're feeling, and then listen for intuition. And the idea is, when we're aligned to compassion, like we're working for, we let all our feelings flow through us with the breath, and they come up and feed the intuition. Because the emotions are a direct connection to the source, which knows everything. And the intuition is, by definition, an impelling, whether it's a statement or what have you, to take the next most advantageous step for the good of the whole entire situation. And intuition knows that. Intellect has no idea. Intuition knows what that is. And what Einstein says, all the conflicts in the world manifest because that can happen. You know, you can have all of this deep emotion and it moves into intuition, and intuition says something very simple like rest. And then it gets to intellect, where ego and intellect are actually where the decisions are functioning. So if my intuition said turn left, it's not the intuition in the heart that impels the hand to grab the steering wheel. It's the intellect. But the intellect has been given free will to say no. And isn't this true? Intuition is saying rest. Intellect is saying, I can't rest. I've got a million things to do, and I'm going to go out and do them. And then you go out and do them, and you end up getting sick, and you end up creating conflict. So our work that we do with conflict revolution is, how do we clear that intellect to be always listening for intuition and then doing what it says? That is the greatest challenge of a human being, I think, from all the decades of work I've seen.
Definitely. Trusting your intuition is one thing that we always say, isn't it? But we do hear it and we don't trust it. And quite honestly, it's not always possible to follow your intuition, because life does have us doing 101 things. But if we can sometimes follow our intuition or listen, or what do you have to say about the idea that sometimes we just need to acknowledge, I've heard you, I understand, but I'm too busy.
I'm too busy. I have to do all these things.
I heard you, but I'm too busy. I know you're there.
Well, I think it's a it's the evolution of human consciousness of what we're talking about on a very one step at a time level.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like, oh, well, I should just do everything my intuition says. We've got timelines that are working against us intellectually. No, 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 no. So there's that. Like you said, it's progress, but also there's, like, for me, the impelling of rest. It doesn't necessarily mean lie down and sleep. It means shut your mind up.
Yeah.
And that's something you can do anywhere. You can do standing in line at the supermarket or driving in the car. But will you? Will we do that? And so, yeah. And yeah, I was just telling the story the other day of, this whole desire I had to be this rock star. I mean, for 20 years, every fiber of my being, every decision I made, every emotion that was in me was all focused on manifesting this. And in the end, I didn't. Not because I failed, but I think because all of that drive, which was intuitive, was preparing me for another direction I was going. But even now, all these many years later, I still work on, okay, ultimately, especially I think as we get older, I never thought I'd live to be 70, but that change in what's important to us and the understanding that when I was young and I wanted to be a millionaire, now it's like, yeah, I need to have we all need money. You can't, feed your face on applause. However, there's a greater mission in my life that's more sort of Buddhist, I guess, about preparing myself for when I die. I don't want to be attached to anything. And that has nothing to do with money. And my success has nothing to do with money. So I'm constantly readjusting my intellect. It's been programmed to tell us that money is the marker. And it is. It's a beautiful dance that has a lot of mystery to it. I don't think there's always just a straight line for how this happens.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk more about Einstein, but I also want to talk about your whole experience and like just what you were bringing in then was about that kind of shift in your life, how you wanted to be a rock star, and that you've acknowledged now that that experience of being able to channel the music, probably even like being in public, right? Being able to be in front of a crowd, because you're doing that now you're on a world tour. But how, yeah, those experiences have kind of shaped you to be exactly here now doing what you're doing. So I want to go there, and then maybe we'll come back to Einstein afterwards and the unified field theory.
Well, in July of 2023, actually it was leading up. That was my first official kicking off my I call myself a peace pilgrim.
Yeah.
The world tour that I'm taking for the rest of my life. I am devoting myself to this work. And through the many decades that I've done this, yes, I've made some money. I do readings and groups and speaking engagements. However, I was always impelled to get other things to do, which was also very applicable because I've learned budgeting. And I mean, I've learned so many skills from having straight jobs. And so in 2023, I thought, okay, I quit all those little jobs and I'm going to go out and I'm going to make this my, job and my revenue. And it's been a phenomenal ride. And it's just beginning. However, what I've just gotten to is that there is a kind of a high level that happens in this work when it's not done for money. And I'm not saying I should just give away my readings, but when you start to amass a lot of money, then you start to get this attention, and then the media starts. My big thing was to be on Joe Rogan and sell millions of books. And then you get this attention. And then there's this kind of thing that's happening, I think, in the world today with money and money, like, okay, I'm going to give you this money and now
It's a
you're going to do what
distraction,
I
isn't
want.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm back after 2 years to this feeling like, you know what? I don't want to just push this to be the money maker, because I want that high level. I don't want to be beholden to anybody, and even clients. This is what I do. I think I have a reasonable family friendly price on what I do, and you get me and my work. I'm not here to tell you if your boyfriend's coming back. I'm not here to predict your future, but what people think they want. It's like, this is what we do. If that's not where you're at, I think people are brought here, um, like spiritually find their way, because I don't advertise a lot. I love to talk and share my wisdom, and people then find their way to me. But I've always felt through the years, since my first readings in 1987, I didn't advertise. It's like, you bring me the people who are ready for this high level information. And so that's like a whole different pathway that now, even because I'm just ending up this part of the tour where I've been in Europe for two months and going home and manifesting a different way to support myself other than just, oh, I've got to teach some more classes now and I've got to advertise this thing and I got to get out there and be an influencer and get clicks. No.
Yeah, that's a real toughie, isn't it? Because it's so in your face at the moment, and that whole idea, like you said, of success is focused on finances. And
And it's
even if we don't realize it, we have those niggling, how am I going to get the next thing? Like, which is a scarcity mindset, and it's sneaky.
oh, so sneaky.
Yeah.
So sneaky. And when I was meditating the other morning and looking back on, I have always been taken care of.
Hmm.
Always. I've never been homeless. I mean, I've not had a lot of money. I've had a lot of money and not a lot of money. I've always been taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I think that's one thing that I've kind of been focusing on, even just simply like it can be really easy to get caught up in all the prices are going up, food's so expensive. And I go to the supermarket and I'm like, there has been that I have never been in a position where I haven't been able to pay. All is well, right?
Right. But then our minds are like, well, but see, if I had $1 million, or,
Right.
if I had $100,000, then I wouldn't have to worry. It's like, okay, I mean, there's a point, there's a truth to that. If I
Hmm.
had $100 and I wouldn't worry about what's happening next, I would still worry.
Yeah.
There would still be challenges.
Yeah.
And when I got to the end of my life, would I be going, oh, thank God I made $100,000? Or would I be going, thank God I focused on compassion and being in the flow and being in that spiritual, you know, I know what the answer to that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So the work that you're doing now on your tour, I'm just jumping to this because I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of conscious that we haven't really spoken about that yet. Um, are you sharing the work of Albert Einstein, the unified field theory? Can you tell us a little bit about that? I don't know if I'll understand it. And
Well,
you mentioned right at the beginning, what was it? The map of human consciousness. Is that the
yes,
work you're sharing at the moment?
that was the big presentation that brought me to Barcelona.
Okay. Yeah.
And I haven't got that presentation up on my website yet, but on my YouTube channel I have some,
Okay.
peaks, and I have a lot of um stuff on my YouTube channel that's totally accessible. Lots of channeling with Einstein that talk through the unified field. And also when I do meditation,
Okay.
we start in the center of the earth where it begins. And then there's a gravitational wave that flows to the surface where the lens is, where our bodies are, right? And then that goes on into the heavens where it meets what's called the observer. And then as a wave, it joins the Earth's electromagnetic field and flows back up through the North Pole and back down to the center of the planet. So we have the spinning string. And on between the center of the Earth and our bodies, those are the three human dimensions.
Okay.
So emotion, intuition, intellect, and they all work together when they're aligned to manifest. And his theory is that the reason why, if we resolve the conflict within, and you see on the map between the center of the earth and the body and the lens, is the emotion, intuition, and intellect. And he says, whatever is the condition of these three human dimensions perfectly manifests in the lens. And that's why the system can be perfect. Because if there's this big conflict between your intuition and your intellect is constantly saying no and making decisions, that conflict will perfectly manifest in the lens. And it's how the system can be perfect without being perfect. It can be an imperfect relationship, but the system still will perfectly project that.
Got it. Okay. And did the unified field theory come through you? Wow.
Yes.
When that happened.
Did it drive me insane? Yes.
Yes. Were you familiar with any of Albert Einstein's work before?
No, not any science at all. I mean, I had sort of an amateur interest in like science, what is string theory and what is quantum, but I didn't ever really study it. And when I went to do the book in 2005, the first Einstein book, just to Einstein, honestly, my whole attitude was, hey, let's do a little book with Albert Einstein, see what he has to say. I had no anticipation that it would be anything. I had no idea what he was going to say. So when it started to come out, and I did like 6 or 7 channeling sessions and transcribed them and then did a lot of editing with him, like sitting here. And I would hear Google black holes. It's like, okay.
Einstein knows about Google.
Yeah. Because he can be everywhere. He's like gravity. Right. He can be everywhere at once. And then he'd say, okay, take source, observer, and lens, which are terms that they use in whatever they do with black holes, and put them here. And it started out with diagrams like you might think Einstein did, like on a napkin, like just really rudimental. And I'm a graphic designer too, so I could sort of create this. And when it all started to come out and he said, yeah, the source is in the center of the earth and it's a black hole. And I was very adamant of saying, you're expecting me to stand up in front of people who maybe know and say this? Is it even possible? I don't know. And so there was a lot of that went on with me, but ultimately you would know them by their fruits. That everything that had come before this had been so brilliant and so right that I just went, okay.
Wow.
And then I published, and I had the first book tour with Imagining Einstein. I had this event at a metaphysical meetup. So it was a real group. And I thought it was going to be us, woo-woo. But it was amateur physicists and amateur chemists. And so that was my first opportunity to have to stand in front of people quite afraid, going, okay, I talk to dead people. I'm not a scientist. And I don't even know if this really is Einstein. But can I show it to you? And will you tell me what you think? And they're like, yeah, sure. And when we were done, all of them, like the physicist was like, wait a minute, you're marrying the zero point gravity theory with this theory and that theory, and you've come up with the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know, have I? Like, I don't know anything about it. So to go from there to where I just came from in Barcelona was just a huge closure on my
Mm,
mental health.
I bet. Oh my goodness. Wow. Has there has there been any point, I'm just being nosy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
where like you're this is really great work, like, and you've got this tour that you're going on, you're the Peace Pilgrim. Has there been any point where you've got your ego's got in the way with the fact that you can do this, or has it been quite humbling?
Well, of course, I've had my fair share of getting my ego under control. It's been very humbling in that, when it's like when you hear, oh, she channels Einstein, and people don't really get that I didn't just wake up one day and go, oh, guess what? I channel Einstein. It's like been this huge, huge psychological journey that they've carefully done to make sure that I don't lose my mind
Mm,
completely. And for about 4 years after Imagining Einstein came out, and I had left my husband and was going on this different direction, I had very, very, very severe mental health challenges. I still did the greatest work of my life. I was able to function and do these incredible performances or presentations. But then behind the scenes, I was a complete and total mess. I couldn't stop crying for about 2 years. But after 4 years of doing conflict revolution, because I knew that was going to be what saved me, I think I came out the other side of that very, very humbled to have saved my own life with the stuff that we were taught that drove me crazy in the first place
yeah.
and come to this better place. And I think the ego thing now is being translated into, and this is very common, it has nothing to do with psychic abilities, is codependency. How much is it my responsibility to save the world? How much do I sacrifice myself because I've got this answer and it's so brilliant and it's going to save the world? And how much of it is, you know what? I have this. Spirit will bring people to me who need it. Otherwise, it's not my job.
Mm, yeah.
And I think that is the biggest ego taming thing that I've just been through.
Yeah. That's pretty huge journey. Can you talk a little bit? I'm conscious that we're getting close to the end of our hour, but we haven't touched on, you mentioned it, but we haven't kind of gone into it, being aligned with compassion and the relevance of that and the work, the channeling that you've had with Albert Einstein.
When he defined compassion in 2005 as, he called it the fifth fundamental force of the universe. I've changed it now to the first, but it's the creative intelligence field that uses all the other four fundamental forces to impel the creation of the actual physical world one step at a time. And on a uh, like physics level, it revolutionizes what the source is. But on a personal, like humanity level, when we align to compassion, it's kind of what we talked about, is that we allow ourselves to feel all our feelings. We let it flow up into our intuition and we listen. And then we do whatever intuition tells us to do. And oftentimes, intuition will tell you something to do that looks completely counterintuitive to what's right in front of you. But later on down the line, it's sort of like why I didn't get to be a rock star. Later
Mm,
on down the line, I can see I was saved by that. And that's the ultimate trust in present moment, in our own power and our own intuition and our own connection. So that's what we train people to do in conflict revolution. And it naturally then changes how things manifest around us.
mhm. And the the way that it manifests, um, that knock-on effect, the butterfly effect, that's the thing that Princess Diana was talking about, right? If everyone does this, then we'll have world peace. That feels like a big statement, especially right now. I've spoken to another guest recently who's written a book called The Peaceability Mindset, and the sentiment is very similar. We have this big idea of, end world peace, but it starts with us, doesn't it? And what's
Yes.
going on inside, and how we treat the people in our own environment, how we treat ourselves, that self love piece that you mentioned, and also how we treat those around us. Could you maybe uh, give some pointers as to how we can do that?
I think the first thing is to realize that there's this huge world out there and there's stuff happening in the Middle East and in Ukraine and in this and that and the censorship, blah, 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 blah. We've been given our piece of the world, PIECE. We've been given a piece of reality that we can influence. And if we take that really seriously and take our own energy seriously, and then we align to compassion and we start to influence the world around us, to either people will fall away and go be attracted to the lower manifestations that come when you focus outside yourself, and then we'll draw in the people who are really committed to peace, and we'll start to change our family when we change ourselves, our workplace, when we start to go into a situation and go, okay, I'm going to be the peacemaker here because I know this process first takes care of me.
Mm.
And when we are taking care of ourselves, which is our job, not expecting someone else to, and doing it and being fulfilled by it, we have such a power around us. And like Princess Di, imagine everybody in their own little pod world where they're actually doing that. That synergy is so powerful. It's so powerful then to be able to manifest the reduction of war, the things that are on a bigger scale. We just need to focus on our own work, and people just don't. They we so discount our work as unimportant or not having an influence, and it's just the absolute opposite.
Amazing. Wow. What a wonderful story.
I'll have to
And
come back.
I know you're gonna have to come back.
There's
Well,
too
are you
much to
coming to
say.
Australia on your tour?
I I totally have that on my radar. I've had about 4 different podcasts with people in Australia who were like, "Come to Australia." It's like, okay, I'm on my
Okay,
way.
it's a long way, but we'll be here waiting for you.
Well, I
What?
just got booked in Thailand, so that's a little
Oh,
bit
that's
closer.
quite close, yeah.
Yeah.
Great, amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been, yeah, just mind-blowing. Amazing
Well, thank you,
conversation.
Nadine. And let me offer you and your listeners,
Oh,
if they're
yeah.
interested in having a reading, if you go and buy a half-hour reading, I will give you an hour. It's sort of like my half price
Oh,
special
cool.
for podcasts.
Oh, thank you so much. We're going to have your information in our guest directory, so we can pop that in there as well. Yeah, that's a really generous gift. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
And yeah, I reckon it would be pretty cool. All right, Barbara, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.